welcome to our ACE session. The topic that we have today is managing emotion in faith. And with this dialogue, we hope that we'll be able to challenge one another to review our attitude with regard to the topic. And then we will also have the opportunity to encounter God through these experiences. So today's topic is on managing emotions in faith. First, we have to understand what emotions are, and most of all, about my emotions, meaning each one of us, how we deal with our emotions. Three questions pertaining to this topic: what are emotions? What are their sources? How can I be more in touch with my emotions? We need to know that God has created us, human persons, with reason and desire. With God's gifts of our intellect and our will and desire, we are able to think and we are also able to feel. So, as human persons, definitely we will have emotions. And another term for emotions would be feelings. So, we have feelings, we have emotions. That is a human reality. And emotions are psychological reactions to needs met or unmet. And they are usually accompanied with some physiological responses. So, for example, if I'm excited, I may feel my heartbeat beating faster. And then when I'm upset, angry, you can see my physical expressions being reviewed on my face. So it is about needs met or unmet. These are the sources of our emotion that arouse the various feelings. And the need refers to what the human person desires as good for him or her. In life, we desire a lot of things. When I'm hungry, if you have not taken your dinner yet, probably now you are hungering. You desire to have food, and that definitely is a need for you. But then this need may be met or unmet, and that's where the various emotions will come in. There are four basic types of emotions. When the needs are met, then the emotion is joy. Of course, we have many other terms that describe joy: happy, pleasant, satisfied, etc. And when the needs are unmet, I desire certain things, but I don't get it. And then the feeling is sadness. And to attain these needs, some of them are easily attainable, some are more difficult. When I perceive that the need is being deprived, I'm being obstructed in obtaining the need, or the need is being that good that I want to have is kind of being removed, or we use the word inverted commas, stolen from me. And then the feeling is anger. So needs not met because of some difficulties, or rather because of some obstructions that will arouse the emotion of anger. And when the need that I want to fulfill is perceived to be very difficult to get, and in trying to satisfy my need, there can be some danger, and then the feeling will be fear. So these are the four basic types of emotions that we have, and they are linked to needs being met or not being met, and also the situation surrounding, whether there are difficulties, dangers, obstructions, etc. Give you a concrete example, since we talk about food, makan. So you desire to eat durian. There's that need. There's that good things that you're longing for. So you go to the shop, the fruit seller, you manage to buy, and you have chosen the good durians. You bring back, you enjoy the food, so the needs met. You have that satisfaction, the joy. Same example, you desire to eat durian, but then for various reasons, there's no supply. So you can't get the durian that you wanted so much. So there is this feeling of disappointment, sadness. The broad category is sadness. The subcategory would be disappointment. Or you desire to eat durian, but there is only limited stock. So the seller says that, no, I have only these stocks and it's already being reserved for other clients. They have already booked, they have paid. And so you see the durian, you want to buy the durian, but you're prevented from having them, and you get upset. So that is the emotion of anger. Or you desire to eat durians, but recently health department announces that this current batch of durians imported for this particular country, somehow they are toxic. They use too much insecticides during that growth period. So you want to eat, but you're worried, yeah, safe or not safe. So there is the emotion of fear. So these are the four basic types of emotions: joy, sadness, anger, and fear. And they are linked to needs met or unmet. And there are various shapes of the four basic types of emotions. You'll be good if you can go through all these different lists, because our experience is that very often we don't really know how to identify and label our feelings. So it's good if you can go on Google search and all that, and you try to find the different expressions of the emotions. For joy, for example, these are a few descriptions: happiness, delight, satisfactions, amusement, excitement, relief, peace, satisfies. All these are linked to the emotion of joy. And then for sadness, you feel lonely, grief, lost, troubled, disappointed, miserable, hopeless, gloomy, etc. So these are the different shapes of the emotions, joy and sadness. For anger, you can also say, I feel disgust, frustrated, annoyed, disgusted, bitter, irritated, insulted, resentful, vengeance. All these are related words to express our anger. As for feared, worried, uncomfortable, disturbed, doubtful, dreadful, nervous, anxious, terrified, panic, horrified, desperate, confused, stressed, jealous. So these are related feelings concerning fear. Some people do not know what emotions are. For example, I mentioned that the emotions are linked to needs met or unmet. Very often we do not know that. And that's why we don't understand our emotions. Why we are feeling in that particular way. But if we know that it is because there's a need not met, and also the circumstances, whether there's danger, there's obstacles and all, then we know what is the source of our emotions. But sometimes we know, yet we do not know my emotions, meaning I'm not able to really pinpoint and identify the emotions that I have. And then also many people mix up emotions and judgments. Let us look at the following two expressions. I feel that your brother does not like me. I feel uneasy in your brother's presence. One statement is actually a statement expressing emotion, While the other statement actually is a statement of judgment. I'm making certain guess, I'm making certain judgment. I am presenting a thought about a situation, about someone. One expresses a judgment or the thought. Although I use the word I feel, but actually I'm thinking, I'm judging. I think that your brother does not like me. And that is, I may have observed certain things, the way he talks and whatever. And then I judge that your brother does not like me. But when I say I feel uneasy in your brother's presence, I'm expressing a feeling of uneasiness, and that is my feeling. And as I say, why do I have that feeling? Then I have to go inside and ask myself, what is that need that is met or unmet? And also the circumstances surrounding the needs met or unmet, to understand my feeling better. We hear in our daily conversations, people use the word I feel, but actually they means I think. And when I say I feel and I really express my emotions, then I'm expressing myself. But when I say I feel, but actually I mean I think, then actually I'm making a judgment about the situation or about the person that I meet. So let's have another example. I feel it is not safe. I should not attend the function. Actually, I'm saying that I think it is not safe. I'm making a judgment and assessing the situation and say, I think it's not safe. I should not attend the function. So this is a judgment. This is not a statement of emotional expressions. But when I say I feel anxious attending the function due to the COVID-19 situations, then I'm expressing what is inside me, and that's my feeling. It's important for us to make that distinction so that when we communicate with other people, we really know that we are communicating our feeling or we are actually communicating a judgment. Understanding, identifying, and accepting emotions are the foundation to coping and managing my emotions. There are people who like to ask that questions. How do you feel? Sometimes out of habit, sometimes out of genuine concern. But these seemingly simple questions of how do you feel is actually a very loaded question. The more honest and accurate you can answer this question, how do you feel, then the more effectively you can cope with them. Because you're aware, you're in touch. And that is the basis of you responding to your emotions appropriately or sometimes inappropriately. So let's now go on to look at the nature of emotions. There are some questions linked to that topic. Are there morally good or bad emotions? How do we cultivate, inverted comma, godly emotions? What are godly emotions? Where do we draw the line between normal emotions and mental disorders? What is the role of emotions for the virtuous person? Why did God allow us to feel emotional? Is God Himself emotional? Sometimes the pressure comes from my own expectation myself and it affects how I see others. How can I now be so mindful of how other people view me? So these are not really so much an emotional question, but a kind of a judgmental questions. Is it wrong to then show my emotions outwardly instead of keeping it within ourselves? So a very diverse questions, but I put them together under this discussion, the nature of emotions. First, we must recognize that emotions are spontaneous reactions to needs met or unmet. And they are by themselves neither good nor bad. So they are actually morally neutral. The so-called bad emotions like anger, sadness, frustration, jealousies, and so forth, by themselves, they are not morally wrong. They are just indicators telling us that something is happening. So do not be alarmed if you have so-called negative emotions, so-called negative or bad emotions. Actually, by themselves, they are neither good nor bad. And in a way, all emotions are good since they are revealing our inner self to us. They enable us to know ourselves. And self-awareness is very important to my own psychological health and to my interpersonal relationship. That self-awareness will help me to live more authentically. So again, emotions are actually neutral, or they are good if we are aware of our emotions and if we respond appropriately. Even so-called negative emotions, such as anger and jealousy. What is important is that we should look behind or beyond the emotions and examine the needs unmet. I'm talking about the so-called negative emotions, because when needs are unmet, then you have the negative emotions. When we don't have the right attitudes towards the needs that we desire to satisfy, they stir some emotion within us. So we must look at our attitudes. And when we notice that we have wrong attitudes, then we can and we should do something about it. So emotions are only indicator signs. They're only telling us something about something happening inside. So we must go deeper and look at our insight to understand our emotions. An emotion indicates that something is happening. Therefore, you must look inside to see what the sign is pointing at, to examine your needs and your attitude towards that need. And then you can determine what you should do. So it's important for you to be in touch with your feelings. Take, for example, you realize that someone has more or better qualities than what you have, and you feel jealous. It's important that you recognize that you are jealous. And when you look inside concerning your needs, then you realize that, yeah, you have the need, you have the desire to win. You want to win, and you want to be better than others. It may be in the area of look, skill, or possession. But somehow, when you compare, then you realize that you seem to be more inferior to that person, and therefore you feel jealous. So the root source of your feeling of jealousy is that attitude that you keep on comparing with other people. And that comparison, when it results in you feeling inferior to that person, that's when the emotions of jealousy will arise. So how do you react to that? So when you do nasty things to destroy your competitor, and that's when that emotion of jealousy turns evil. We read sometimes from newspaper reports how two sports competitors, they find ways and means deliberately to hurt the opponent, so that by causing injury to the opponent, presenting it as an accident, and they could win over the competitor. And that is definitely something evil. The feeling of jealousy itself is neutral, but it is these nasty actions that is going to be evil. Or when you realize that you are jealous and you realize that the root cause of it is because of your attitude of trying to compare with others and always wanting to win, then you stop doing that. You learn to accept your own uniqueness and the person's uniqueness and be happy with yourself. And that's when the feeling of jealousy will go away. Or let's take another emotions, nervousness, anxiety. Say a student is taking a coming exam and he feels nervous. So the person needs to look inside. Of course, it can be an adult who is taking an adult exam, right? And the exam can be even a driving test and things like that. Then when you look inside yourself, you desire to do well in that exam. You want to pass that exam, but you expect it to be difficult. And as a boy or girl, you presume that your parents will get upset and punish you if you do not score well. Or as an adult, you're seeking a test and you expect that if you don't do well, and then it's going to affect your career or whatever. And the more you amplify the difficulties and the negative consequences, the more anxious you become. So that's when you look inside and recognize that. And then you recognize your attitude, that you're presuming a lot of the unknown. You still do not know what the result will be. You still don't know what will happen in that, but you already start to worry because you're anticipating all the difficulties and all the negative consequences. And your reaction to that, so because of the fear and anxiety, then you become overly anxious and you stop preparing for exam, thinking that after all, it is so difficult, after all, you won't pass. And then it becomes, of course, self-defeating. Or you just say, okay, I will just focus on the presence. I do my best. I do the necessary preparations. I pray for God's wisdom and guidance. I try. And then if I pass, okay, then I'm happy. If not, I fail, then I see what else I can do. But I make a kind of a realistic expectation for myself and do what is possible to anticipate the event. It is when you do not make the necessary adjustment, but persist in your negative thoughts about how bad and how wrong things can be, then anxiety can become pathological, right? Because you allow that to really attack you. And that's when we commonly call that a mental problem. But that happens only if you persist on that negative cycle of self-defeating thoughts that arouse that negative emotions. Next, we'll talk about managing emotions. There are some questions. How do we balance between feeling and suppressing negative emotions? What if I can't control my emotions? What's the difference between venting emotion and gossiping? I don't like the feeling. What can I do? Etc. etc. So how to manage the emotions? We know that there are different ways of expressing our negative emotions. Some are helpful to our mental health and interpersonal relationship, while others are not. So learning how to manage, how to express our emotions is very important. The unhelpful ways, first, when I disown my emotions, I try to withdraw from people. I remain silent. I refuse to talk. I deny that I have the emotions. For example, I claim that I'm not angry, but then other people can see very clearly that you are angry. And so denial, of course, does not remove the emotions. It's not a helpful way because even if I deny, the emotion is still there. So when I have all these different kind of negative emotions, they are going to have a great impact on me. Or I may blame other people when I do not own my emotions. I will accuse others for causing them. And when I do that, because I don't own them, then I cannot deal with them. So the realizations and acceptance of your emotions are very important. It's only when you own it, when you say, yes, I'm the one having that emotions, I'm the one feeling angry, I'm feeling jealous, I'm upset, then I can deal with them in appropriate manners. Very often we hear people making that remark, you make me angry, you make me upset. When we say that, we are putting the blame on other people. We do not owe the emotions. We do not admit that I'm angry, I'm upset. But if I can do that, I can accept and admit my own emotions that I'm angry, yes. Then I can look inside, I explained earlier, and to discover the needs met, unmet, and so forth. Then I can learn to deal with all these emotions in healthy and appropriate manners. Let's give another example. In a restaurant, Peter has a need to be served promptly and courteously. So he wants to enjoy his meal, and part of enjoying his meal is that he's being served promptly and politely. But when he perceives that the waiter is slow and rude, and he feels upset and angry because he has made that judgment that the waiter is not friendly, the waiter is not paying attention on him, and he feels upset and angry. His needs are not met. So knowing that he's angry by itself, we say that it's not wrong. But then when Peter starts to shout at the waiter and insult him, so he's reacting in a very disrespectful manner. And obviously that is inappropriate. That will do no good to himself and to the relationship and to him enjoying the meal. What we want to learn is that we want to learn to express our negative emotions in appropriate manner. And telling someone about our negative emotions can help a lot. We speak about our emotions in a factual and non-judgmental manner. When you're able to do that, then others can understand how we feel, then they can empathize with us, and most likely they will be able to respond in a manner that can be helpful to us in meeting our needs. Because we say that we have negative emotion because our needs are not met. So, but when others understand how we feel about certain situations and recognize how in that situations certain needs are not met, and then they would probably make some effort to assist us in having the needs met. So a healthy emotional expressions includes the following elements. First, I state the fact about what has happening. Oh, I have made my order 15 minutes ago. I've been waited patiently for a while, but the food is not served yet. I'm feeling hungry, or I'm in a hurry. I have another important appointment. So because of that circumstances, said my feelings, your feelings. I'm feeling agitated, I feel anxious, and that feelings are associated with the food not being served promptly because I expected it served promptly, or I expected to be on time for my next appointment, and I'm sure that I will be late. So I become aware of all these feelings and a number of needs here, and then I may be able to make a request to address the situations in a polite manner. So in this case of food being served, then I may want to express to the waiter, yeah, sorry to disturb him or her. Yeah, I understand that there are a lot of guests, but yeah, I'm really in a hurry for another important appointment. Yeah, I shouldn't have arranged my meal in such a tight schedule, but yeah, but I have that needs. Can you help me? So if I express in this manner, then most likely the waiter will try his or her best to address the situations and help me to have my needs met. And it's important to help other people to understand your feelings so that the person's understanding your feelings then can respond in more appropriate manner. So we have another example. Your colleague criticizes you in front of other colleagues, making nasty comments about certain work issues, etc. So you may want to let that colleague know how you feel. And you criticize me in front of other colleagues. I have a need to be respected, and I have my privacy, and I feel very embarrassed and upset when that I feel that that privacy is being violated. And so I request that you speak privately with me in future when you have any concerns about certain issues or not. So if I'm able to express myself in a more polite and respectful manner and helping my colleague to understand what upsets me, my needs for privacy and my needs to be respected, etc., then I can help my colleague to respond in more appropriate manner. So it is a kind of mutual assistance in the difficult situations like that. In general, for people who are close to you, family members, good friends, and all that, sharing negative emotions of anger, frustration, sadness, and then of course also positive emotions, satisfaction, joy. There's a misspelling, joy, and relief, enhance intimacy with them. The more you're able to communicate your emotions, your feelings, the more you will be able to promote mutual understanding and then promote good interpersonal relationships. I think the difficult part for many of us is that we are not able to identify our feelings and label them correctly and express them in non-judgmental manner, not accusing other people for causing these negative emotions and so forth. And when I'm able to honestly share myself, and in fact, people who are close to us, friends, family members, and all that, they'll be very happy because by sharing emotions, then they get to know us better. Many things we can lie, we can see something, but we don't mean. But emotions we cannot lie, because when we are sad, we are angry, we are upset, people can see from our non-verbal expressions, non-verbal communications. So the feelings reveal the true self about needs met, unmet, and the thinking behind the needs met, unmet, and so forth. So when I'm honest with my emotions, when I share with people who I love, people who care for me, then they will understand not only my emotions, but my needs and what is inside me. And in that manner, then most likely the sharing will uh, promote greater sense of togetherness and intimacy between the loved ones. Next, we talk about managing emotions in faith, how to avoid burned out without being overly cautious, how does faith affect my moods and relationship, how to ask God for help in managing my emotions, can faith help, how to avoid burnout, how to be selfless by relying on God, how to draw boundaries which is God approved when handling emotions. So we talk about dealing with emotions. Of course, we are more concerned about the negative emotions. Positive emotions, no problem. We are happy, we are delighted, and so forth. And it would be quite spontaneous for us to express our joy, share our joy, and when we are joyful, somehow that is yeah, spreading also. Others can feel that joy, and others will feel good about me and the situations. But with negative emotions, I think yeah, we need the wisdom of God to guide us in managing our emotions. So I just mentioned some of them. With regard to anger, James chapter 1 mentioned, know this, my beloved brothers, that everybody be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So here there is an invitation for us to be slow to speak and quick to listen. There's one important lesson about how to manage our feeling of anger and the related feelings, being upset, being agitated, and so forth. And very often it's because we don't listen enough. And when we don't listen enough, we only hear the external words spoken and we react on the external words spoken. The child comes home late. The child told the mother that I'll be back by 10 p.m. And then he or she comes back at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And then open the door, the first thing, the mother will yell at the teenage, what time is this? You told me that you're coming at the 10 o'clock. And you see, and so that kind of a burst of anger. And then, of course, that will provoke the teens to react also. The teen may just ignore the parents, go to the room quickly, slam the door, pang, and then both sides are angry. But then if the child learns to listen beyond the words spoken, yes, mom may be speaking angry words and mom may be scolding and all that. But going beyond that, actually, it is not just anger, it is anxiety, it's worry. And if the child can understand that in the heart, the needs, there is this fear that something wrong may happen, and so that there's a worrying for the child and all that. And so if the child is able to listen beyond the words spoken and listen to the heart of the mother, that I care for you, I'm worried for you, I'm anxious, it's so late already, and maybe something bad will happen to you and so forth. Then instead of she also getting angry, she will appreciate the care and concern of the mother. So be quick to listen and not listen just to the external words, but listen to the heart and be slow to speak, slow to respond, slow to answer back. And that's one important way to help you to manage your anger the godly way. How to deal with anxieties and worries. We say that anxiety, worries, fear is because of our projected needs not met, and we are afraid that the needs are not met. We are afraid of some negative results. But then here in the Gospel of Luke chapter 12, the Lord invites us to trust in divine providence. The Lord asks us to think of the birds in the air. They do not sow, they do not spin, but God feeds them. Think of the flowers in the field, the grass. Yet God clothes them so beautifully. And how much more will He look after you? Will God look after you? Your Heavenly Father knows you need them. So if we know that God knows our needs, yes, we have many needs and some of these needs not met and so forth, we are worried. But God knows our needs. And if we trust that God is the loving Father, God is the Almighty God who knows our needs, and He cares for us more than He cares for the birds and the flowers and so forth. And then we can surrender ourselves and do not be too overly anxious and worried about things in our life. Frustrations. 2 Corinthians, St. Paul speaks that God's grace is sufficient for you. It's spoken in as if God is talking to us. My grace is sufficient to you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Often we feel frustrated because we face obstacles in meeting our needs. And part of the obstacles is because of our inability, our weaknesses, our shortcomings. And that's why we cannot obtain needs that we desire. When we recognize our weaknesses, and then we don't be too overly focused and concerned about our own power, our own ability, but surrender ourselves to God, trusting in His power, trusting in His guidance, and then somehow God will show us the way. Somehow God will help us to overcome the difficulties. Somehow God will give us the necessary strength to break through and so forth. But when we are preoccupied with ourselves and we are only worried about ourselves and we too self-preoccupied, then we lose sight of God. We lose sight that there is God there who is greater than us, who is more powerful than us, who is more wise than us. He will be the one who lead and guide us. And also we trust that because God cares, so sometimes we may not get what we need, but it's okay. It may be another way of God telling us that we don't need that, or He has prepared something else better for us, and therefore we don't be too caught up with that particular need that we are trying to get and be so obsessed with it, so attached to that, but put our full trust and confidence in God. Coping with sadness. Philippians 4, the Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. Yeah, if we turn to God in every circumstances of our life, trusting in Him, yeah, when we feel inadequate, when we feel short, we turn to Him, we express our needs, we express our shortcomings, we ask for His help, we ask for His strength, and so forth. But the key thing is that we do not insist on what we want. Yeah, we may think that something is important, we may think that something is good and all that. So we sincerely desire for it and we ask for it. But we know that we are very often very myopic, and we also know that we have a lot of blind spots, things that we don't see clearly and fully. And because of that, so what we think is good for us is not necessarily good for us. So when we surrender all these things to God in prayer, and always be thankful, always be grateful to God that whatever we have and whatever God intends to give us, they are all pure gifts from God. So with that sense of gratitude and openness to God, then whether I get what I want or not, it doesn't matter, because I realize that God is with me, and His peace then will be with me to guide my hearts and my minds. So just now I speak about myself trusting in God and coping with the various so-called negative emotions of sadness, anxiety, anger, and so forth. But we are also gifted with the ability to empathize with other people. St. Paul says, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. So very often God has put us in the presence of someone to be the one who can be His instruments to help our friends, our family members who are facing some emotional difficulties. And we have a role to play in helping one another. Here's also a side remark. We know that Old Testament writers tend to express God having emotions. Very often they have the anthropomorphic projection of human feelings onto God. So that the word anthropo is man, Greek word for man. Anthropomorphic means the using the human way of describing things, in this case, describing God. So in the Old Testament, it's often said that God is angry, God is upset, God is jealous. Actually, these are the Old Testament way of narrations of talking about God. For me, they are actually not appropriate. And as Christians, we should avoid such expressions of projecting our human feelings onto God, because God is not us. God is God, and God does not behave in the human way. God does not have needs unmet like us, and feeling upset that we have obstacles and difficulties in meeting the needs, and then God will have all these so-called human emotions. The Old Testament writers, they try to attempt to express their relationship with God and how they perceive God responding to them in human terms. For me, they are inappropriate. And as Christians, we should not attribute our own feelings onto God. Some questions relating to helping people with emotional problems. How do we be a good listening ears to others? How do we be present for others in their anguish? How can I reach out as a friend to someone who is in a slum, not motivated to anything, etc. I must remark that this is not a forum for dealing with mental health problems, the more serious one, I mean. So if you have friends and people who have a more serious emotional problems, I ask that you refer the person to professional bodies such as Clarity. Clarity is a Catholic social service agency in Singapore. They have many also public education programs and also provide personal counseling. So at the personal level or at the level of having educations, because every day and then they run public forum workshops and now many conducted online about understanding mental health, managing mental issues, and so forth. And you can read from our e-bulletins every now and then we publicize it, or you can go directly to the website of Clarities and you can search, and there are many programs that can be helpful to you or to helping you to help your friends dealing with some emotional issues. At a personal level, it is helpful to learn to be a listener. Very often, your friends have something to talk, and they simply need someone to listen to their emotional outpouring. So they may keep on talking, sometimes for half an hour, for 1 hour, but actually they don't really need your advice and problem solving. They're not asking you to help them to solve their problems. They are just trying to express, vent their emotions. What they want is just a listening here. And when you give them enough space and time to listen to them, for them that's good enough really. And somehow they have the opportunity to pour out their emotions, have a good sleep, and next day will be all right. Because if you can learn from some of the things I shared today about emotions, about needs met and unmet, and so forth. So some of these things you can share with your friend also, so that you help your friend to understand himself or herself better, especially about their needs met and unmet, and then about the attitude towards the needs met and unmet. When we understand that, when we realize that, when we have a greater self-awareness and self-acceptance, then already we have the tools to deal with our emotional difficulties. The last topic is about feeling emotional during faith events. How do emotions affect my faith? How does faith affect my emotion? How are emotions related to faith? How do I use faith and religion to control my emotions? Is there a proper place for emotions in the Christian faith journey? Why do some people feel emotional during religious celebration? Is there an emotional connection with God? Why? And so I lumped all this question into the question about emotional feeling during faith events. Faith events for us Catholics would include a celebration of the Eucharist, others sacramental celebrations. For other Christian groups, it can be their rally, one or their worship service, etc. We know that all faith events, including the Catholic worships, are meant to facilitate man's encounter with God. It is never meant to arouse emotion and make the participants feel high. So if someone say that I come to church, I don't feel high, and it's rightly so because the mass is not the time and the place to make you feel high. Yeah? The mass is the place for you to encounter God, to experience His presence, His love, and His life giving for you. Faith events invites conversion of hearts, not emotional responses that are devout of sincere soul searching and genuine sorrow of sins. So you don't have to be crying to feel your sorrow, all these emotional expressions. It can, but it's not necessary. And more importantly, the contrition of heart is not that emotional outbursting. Sometimes it can be, but most importantly, it is the change of mind, change of heart. And on the other hand, faith events leads to rejoicing in the Lord also. But rejoicing in the Lord is different from excitement and entertainment. And Jesus said that peace I give it to you, peace that the world cannot give. Joy I give to you. If you love one another, then the joy will be complete in you. This love and peace and joy that the Lord speaks about is not that kind of excitement, a kind of a merry-making kind of feeling high. Often, maybe you go to a concert, you go to that kind of thing, then you feel high, you shout and scream, and then you have momentarily high feeling and so forth. But worship is not the place for you to try to get high in that manner. And we worship God regardless of how we feel. We worship God because God deserves our worship, not because it makes us feel good, feel high in a certain way. If we are going to worship God because just want to have that good feeling, then probably we are worshiping God in the wrong reason. Of course, by itself, if we worship God, God is true, God is good, God is beauty, we will have this serene feeling, we have this sense of peace and all that if we worship God in with the right dispositions, but not necessarily that high feeling as if you have gone for a dancing, a disco night, and the kind of high feelings. But how can we move beyond cold, dull, repetitive worship? But of course, how we perceive the worship is not just the worship itself, it's very often reflects about our own inner disposition, our own inner attitude. It's because we have certain attitude that we bring with when we go for worship, say for example, Eucharistic celebrations, then we will probably have certain experience which we describe as dull, repetitive, and things like that. Now, if you go to the worship with that desire to really honor God, to worship Him, to listen to His word and so forth, most likely we would not have that so-called dull and boring feeling. But of course, if you are an emotionally repressed person, perhaps you should learn to embrace your feelings as an essential part of how God made you. And so if you're always very repressed, very downcast, and everything seems to be gloomy and all that. So even when you go to church, you have that gloomy feelings and all that. Probably that's not quite good for you. So you need to really learn to open yourself to really feel the presence of God, really to experience His love and His guidance and so forth, and feel that inner peace and joy. But if, on the other hand, you have a person who is easily excited and always wanting to go higher, perhaps you need to be more attentive of not being paying too much attention on seeking emotional high, but paying attention on genuinely seeking God and worshiping Him. And there is no absolute right or wrong answer to this. It all depends on your own character, your disposition, your personality, and so forth. But at the same time, genuine worship will definitely bring about that sustained peace that God will give you, the gift of peace and joy that the world cannot give. There must be right disposition for worship. First, of course, we must have relationship with God. We want desire to have a relationship with God. And therefore, if you have a broken relationship, then you must come to Him with a sorrow and contrite heart, humbly acknowledging your sins. But if you already are in good relationship with God, then of course no problem. We just come happily to worship Him, to sing praises to Him, and to experience His presence, His self-giving love for you. Worship is not meant to devout of feelings. We must rejoice in the Lord always, as St. Paul says, during and outside of worship. And we believe that people who are close to God, we will be able to have the sense of peace. God, there will be difficulties in life, there will be hardships, there will be struggles and all that. But with the assurance of the presence of God and with our trust and confidence in Him, we will not be downcast. We will not have that gloomy look as if God doesn't exist, as if God is not with us. So thank you. Thank you for listening.